Okay, so I am recording this for those who couldn't be here. We'll see how that works. Without counsel, plans are all messed up, the scripture tells us. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety, or those plans are established. And so it's important. In fact, Bishop talked a little bit about planning. I don't know if you caught that when he was preaching this morning. And it's important that when we commit something to the Lord, like this, what I'm about to tell you about, we're asking for the Lord's help to get it going. And to, Nikki has done this with the first impressions. And we have a first impressions that, people are wowed by it. They love our first impressions team. Thank you, Nikki, for leading us and helping us with that. So this is about the Crossroads, the emergency response group. Now this is going to sound kind of funny at first. I know, we got all these big fancy names. But we're not always going to be this size. I'm telling you, we are not always going to be the size we are. I'm telling you. You just need to pay attention because there are things going on and things are happening, and you're going to hear more about that soon. There's a lot going on, and God is moving in a spectacular way. And one of the most hardened areas of the world is the east coast of the U.S. And I'm telling you, God is breaking down the enemy here in the east coast. You'll hear more about that later. But anyway, this is about the Crossroads Emergency Response Group, which is made up of two teams. The Crossroads Safety Team, which was stood up about probably 4 or 5 months ago now. It's been a little bit. And whether you're aware of it or not, the safety team is active in every service that we have, every special service. We just had VBS, Vacation Bible School, and we were here for that. So very important. But the second team is the Crossroads Medical Team. And now some of you, we have in here a paramedic, an EMT. We have a lot of people that have basic first aid and CPR, and you're thinking, not me. I know. Believe me, in putting this meeting together, I found that a number of you really don't want to be here, or you're nervous about being here because all you have is basic first aid, CPR. But we have a place for you in this. And I promise that by the end of this next hour, you that had CPR and basic first aid, you will be able to perform brain surgery when I'm done. These tables, we're going to practice on a couple of you with these tables. No, do not worry. But the idea is this. Now, the safety team covers everything. In fact, if there is a medical event that takes place here, the safety team will spring into action and they will be doing something, to help out. But the idea is to think ahead, think about things that can happen. Like in the case of the safety team, we've already had several meetings. We've had a number of tabletop exercises. We're going to have one here in just a moment. But tabletop exercises where I present a situation and we're going to talk through it. What would we do? What should we do? What could we do? Those three questions sound similar, don't they? And we work through that. And I have learned a lot in each meeting that we've had. And I believe everybody on the safety team has learned a lot as we've talked through situations. What would we do when this happens? Of course, the safety team's covering all kinds of other things. Service disruptors, protesters, to power outages, water outage, whatever. All kind of things. But what if we have a medical event during a church service? Are we going to just sit back and think, man, I hope somebody helps that poor lady? Is that what we're going to do? Or are we going to do something? Are we going to spring into action? Of course, for our two law enforcement, and I'm ex-law enforcement, our EMT and our paramedic, and I'm an ex-EMT. We have, now not so much me because it's been a while since I've done any of that stuff, but we're kind of used to the adrenaline pumping. Here's the situation, and you got to jump into it. So they're kind of going to be a natural at it. But the rest of us, we're not. Okay, but we're going to help them. Hopefully, if something happens, one of them will be here.
Amen.
Amen. The idea is we're going to be dialing 911 and for first responders, but the 5 to 10 minutes that it's going to take for somebody to get here, those are precious minutes. And a lot can happen in a few minutes. And is there something we can do? Or are we just going to sit back, think, well, I hope Sister So-and-so will get up and do something? Because I'm too nervous. Believe me, we're all going to be nervous if something happens in church like that. We all will be. Well, again, maybe not so much the law enforcement, the paramedic, and the EMT. Maybe not so much them. Probably a little bit. But not like the rest of us. But we got to do something. We got to be able to do something. So what we find, and when I say we, I'm not talking about just us here, but what we have found is that when we talk about these things, we run tabletop exercises, at some point drills, actual drills. There's a lot of churches that are doing this. It sounds kind of funny. A lot of churches, they say you've got to do it. You've got to run drills during church service. You've got to have practice drills because you will learn so much by doing so. Well, we're a long way from that, I would say. We haven't gotten there. But I can tell you just by talking through some of these things, we learn a lot. And it's very, very helpful. So we commit ourselves to the Lord, whatever we do, Scripture says. And He will establish your plans. He will help you. We do our best. We got to do our best, whatever that is. So we got to think through this stuff ahead of time. And that's the purpose of this, is for us to get together, talk about what we would do, talk about what we need. We've already had some discussions about what we need. The church has already made some purchases about what we need. The cabinet on the far right has first aid kit in it already. We're going to get a more super duper la-di-da-da first aid kit soon. And we're talking about an AED. Hoping to get one of those soon. So we're going to get some things. What else do we need? Now, those of you who have, because we've got several nurses in here, and you know for paramedics, EMTs, law enforcement, nurses, and anybody else I'm missing, you know that if you're called on to do something, you're going to want certain things at the ready, right? Yep. Yeah. And so we need to talk about it, and we talk about it, we make an informed decision, and we will purchase certain things. We've already started that, and we'll do some more. So that's the purpose of this, is to get together, to coordinate, to talk, and talk amongst each other, and about things that we need, things that would work. So we want to provide a credible response if there is a medical event that happens in one of our church services. We want to be able to be credible or be helpful, okay? Instead of just like, I don't know what to do. We want to think about it, talk about it, and be ready to move when it happens. Moments count. So the few moments between when we dial 911, it takes the Charles County Sheriff's Office or the EMTs or the fire or whoever to get here. Those moments can really count. It's an analogy, okay? But I think it was the most recent church shooting was in Nashville about 2 or 3 months ago, I believe. And in that particular case, now this applies obviously more to the safety team, but there's a relationship here between the safety team and the medical team, and I think you'll get what I'm trying to say. But here's what happened. The woman who wanted to be a man or whatever, I can't keep all that straight. But anyway, she got a high-powered rifle. She went into this Catholic church school and was going to kill many, many people and destroy. But here's what happened. She goes in there. First off, she had a little bit of a hard time getting in there because they had talked about it ahead of time. They had talked about it, and they had planned, and they had run drills. And I may have my things mixed up. I'm not sure if it's the right one. But anyway, they went in there, and this school, they had plans, and they had run drills, and they went into lockdown procedure. There were only 5 people running around loose. Everybody else was locked down. In all the different classrooms, offices, they were all locked down. But there was I believe it was an assistant principal and 4 kids that were probably going to or from the restroom, and they had gotten locked out. those were the only people who were attacked. I don't think they were, I think 1 or 2 were killed and the others were injured. It could have been a absolute catastrophe. But it wasn't, because the school had plans, they had practiced, they talked about it, and they were ready. Well, then the first responders come in, and as we all know, some of these situations, first responders have really messed up, because probably, you know, it wasn't probably the people that actually were there, arrived in their patrol cars and fire trucks and all that. It probably wasn't them so much as the leadership above them, because they hadn't practiced, they hadn't planned, they hadn't said, okay, when this happens, this is what you do. But instead, in one situation, there was actually a high-ranking police commander who, no, we're not going in, we're going to wait till we find out what's going on. And there were many people killed in that incident. But this last one, I think it was Nashville, they went in right away. One of the law enforcement said, I need 3 guys with me, I think it was. I've watched the video several times, I don't remember it all now, but I want 3 guys, come on, let's go. And he told them what to do, and off they went. They had a plan, and they followed it, and the whole situation was neutralized really quick. Well, the same thing applies to the medical side, okay? And if we talk about it, if we plan, if we pre-position some things that we might need, like an AED, for instance, and a good first aid kit that has appropriate, and I'm not talking about a little thing, just has Band-Aids and methylate. If anybody know what methylate is besides me? I do. A few of us older ones. Yeah, that was the go-to super juice back in the day. And then they came out with Bactine, and it didn't sting, and we were like, oh, hallelujah. Except I wasn't saying hallelujah back then. Anyway, okay. Here's a tabletop exercise for you. Our church service has just begun, maybe 10, 15 minutes. We're singing, we're worshiping God. And on the second row, 67-year-old Sister Beatrice, or could be Brother Bertrand. You pick your choice, okay? You like those names?
Sure.
They're married, Beatrice and Bertrand. And all of a sudden, we're going to say it was Beatrice, okay? Not because I'm picking on women, but Beatrice, she's precious, by the way. We love Sister Beatrice. She kind of went like this, and she's leaning against Bertrand. And, you know, I'm about 3 rows back, and I'm like looking, something don't look right to me. It don't look right. And now I notice Brother Bertrand, he's like, and then you sense something's wrong. That's all we know. What could you do? What should you do? What would you do?
Pray. BSI, safe.
What's that?
BSI, seen as safe.
I still didn't catch what he said.
BSI. Body substance isolation is a scene safe.
Oh, body substance isolation. We're all safe? That's what you said?
When we do our paramedic protocols and our EMT training, that's the first thing you do before any call is you put on your BSI, your body substance isolation, your gloves, and you determine if the scene is safe.
Okay. They didn't, when I was an EMT, they didn't have that. They didn't have them fancy
You don't
words.
have safety.
We didn't have, I don't remember having rubber gloves. They just said dive in, you know.
It wasn't no body solutions. It was just
What could we do? What should we do? Send a person to check on them.
yeah, maybe you just fell asleep. You never know.
One person.
One person.
One person. Don't make a scene.
Maybe the most qualified person?
Yes.
Hallelujah.
You know it's not going to happen that way, but one person should be.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen that way.
One person. So that's interesting, because in the safety team we have the same thing. If there's a service disruptor, we have one person approach the problem.
Disruptor.
And the disruptor. And the other safety team members, they will come around, but they're not going to crowd in. They're going to, because we don't want to threaten the person and make it work. We can make the situation much worse. So similar here, I hadn't heard that, or if I had, I'd forgotten it. Okay, so send one person to check.
Yep.
Then what? They appear. Let's add some information. They appear to be in real serious trouble.
Render aid.
Render aid.
Circulation, breathing airway.
Circulation, breathing airway.
Call 911.
Thank you. Call 911.
We went 911 there as soon as we can. As we're praying over that. Jesus, heal us.
No one's here.
It's like, I am 911.
Exactly. Like, hey,
I know that you don't like that.
Oh wait, we're already here.
Reaching for my radio.
Okay, so let's add a little information. So this has happened. It just so happens Caleb and Joanne are here. Paramedic EMT. One of them comes probably, paramedic is higher. Not to knock Joanne at all. I know I took that EMT test and it was tough. It was really tough. But the point is, and let me just touch on that for a minute. So if something happens here, this is a non-sterile environment. Okay, we've got nurses, but the paramedic and the EMTs, they're trained to deal, and they're used to dealing in a situation like this. Not knocking the nurses at all, thank God for them. But typically our nurses are in an environment where there's appointments and there's people coming in and it's a little more controlled and all that. Whereas the EMTs, they're kind of, and the paramedic, firemen, law enforcement, they are used to chaos. They're coming into a chaos situation. Well, all of a sudden, this happens during church service. It's going to be momentary chaos, is it not? Yeah. So you want to defer to those who have the most training for the situation. And like I say, hopefully they are here. And if they're not here, then hopefully some of our nurses are here and are ready to, and this is a different environment for them. For those of us who have less, actually all my basic stuff and CPR and all that's run out a long time ago. Now I've decided when we do hold the next class, I'm going to be in it. I'm going to do it because looking into this has made me think about the importance of all of this. So, so moments count. And we can't just sit back and expect somebody. We've got to get up and do something. So, does anybody have anything they want to add to this real quick miniature tabletop exercise?
Just that because we are a church and all this are off duty, there's going to be very limited things we can do for anybody. So it's going to be basically CPR, which now is hands only, no breathing for them. So that's it.
Thank the Lord.
Amen. Or major bleeding control, which we'll get to at a later date.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're not doing anything. It's going to be kind of stabilize them, call 911, and just kind of keep people away because you got everybody that wants to come in and help, or maybe take Sister so-and-so out into the lobby. Let's pick her up. Let's get her out of there.
Right.
Still have church.
Right.
Be a church. Yeah. Anyway, bring them out, but it's going to be very, very limited here. It's going to be stabilize the scene, stabilize the person, call 911. That's really it.
Yeah. Several things flowing through my mind here. So this is similar to the safety team in that part of the safety team's job, if there's an event that happens, somebody's disrupting the service, we have a safety team, and on it are our two law enforcement officers. And if they're here, we're going to defer to them. We're going to do whatever they tell us to do, we're going to do. We're going to follow their lead. But if they're not here, we're going to try to de-escalate. But part of the thing we talk about a lot with the safety team is that some of you need to separate and keep people away. Because believe it or not, when something happens, there's going to be some people that are like, what's going on? They're going to want to get right in, kids, some of them, they're not squeamish, and they want to know what's going on there. And so part of the job, especially this is important for those of you who have less, professional training. You maybe only have basic CPR and those kind of things. But we would look to you to help with these other duties, like crowd control, so to speak, for lack of a better term. And perhaps to put a shield wall up. If somebody, because sometimes, as we know, when something's going on, a medical event, it doesn't always look so pretty.
Right. That's right.
And it can create a situation that's what we would call not very modest as well. Now the reason I picked this particular tabletop exercise was less than a year ago, this actually happened. And were you guys there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I was just thinking,
Yeah.
okay. So we were at Christmas in the Smokies. It was early December of last year. And there's probably 350 people in the room and worshiping the Lord with basically Southern gospel music down in Gatlinburg, or Pigeon Forge, one of them. Anyway, 3 rows ahead of us, we were like 10, 15 rows back, but 3 rows ahead of me and 2 people over. So we're right in front. That's what I saw. Probably about a 60, 70, I forget, I knew her age at the time, I don't remember, but you know, she just fell into her husband. I thought, boy, that looks strange. And then I noticed he was like, you know, you see, there was like a worried look on his face, and he was like trying to figure out what's going on. And she just kind of fell into it. And I'm like, my wife's a nurse. Fiend, I think something's wrong there. It's like everything, now this is what happened to me. Everything went into slow motion. It was like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? What's going on? This is strange. This is weird. And I'm like, Fiend, something's wrong with her. Go check. And she's like, looking at me like, you go check. I don't know what's going on with her. You know, and it was, our minds went into, because, you know, we're not used to that. So the next thing you know, she's laid out on the floor. And it so happened we had in with us, there was a doctor, a paramedic. The paramedic pretty much took over the scene. Obviously, a doctor has way more training. But in that situation, the paramedic basically took over and started rendering CPR. Yeah. This went on for 15 minutes before first responders got there. And they were getting nowhere. They told us she did not have a heartbeat. They worked on her, first responders worked on her for quite some time. In the background, the people running the event, they were, you know, some of them are preachers and they're all gospel singers. They're telling us to pray. Several people were around the husband and praying especially for him. And so all these things are going on. And we're praying, and I mean, we're speaking in tongues. We're quite loud. The whole place is really, not everybody in there, trust me, didn't have the Holy Ghost. Not everyone in there. But it was, so they worked on her for a while. Then they put her on the cot, and they took her out to the ambulance outside. They were out there about another 10 minutes. They took her. They told us she had died. But in the ambulance, before they actually left the building, they got her heartbeat back. And she came back. She was out for a long time. Yeah. They worked on her for like 25 minutes. They said she didn't have anything. Yeah. And the Lord brought her back. And she, I touched base later with people running it. They're friends of ours. And they said that, I knew her name and all that. I don't remember. But anyway, here's the thing. They said that she had never had anything wrong with her. But she fell out. And her heart stopped. She was gone. But the Lord brought her back. Because of diligent efforts of first responders that were actually in the show with us. And then those who showed up. So it does happen. It really, things like this do happen. It happens in our churches. Just yesterday, a pastor's wife, if I understand it correctly, she was pregnant, was, I don't remember all the details, but killed in a car accident. Was that a car accident?
It was on a 15-passenger van with kids.
Going to a church event with other people in the van, and she was killed. And I think there were 3 people killed. This was church people. These were our people I'm talking about. I'm not talking about First Baptist Church down there. I'm talking about they were apostolics.
A drummer.
A week ago, the drummer from one of our churches in New York, fine drummer. Really, I was impressed with him. And he's traveled down to some of the islands, I forget which ones, with Brother Kleindentz doing, he was a drummer down there. He went with some of them. just seemed like the nicest guy. And on his way to church, not today, a week ago today, on his way to church Sunday morning, and was killed. So it does happen. It does happen. And it seems like everybody I know notices there's a lot more going on now than what they're used to. There's a lot of things happening. So we need to be ready. And that's the purpose of this, to talk through some of these things, because it does happen. So if one of you wants to build a tower, won't you first sit down and estimate the cost and make sure you have enough money to complete it? Sure, that's Bible, right? That's Luke 14:28. Well, we're not building a tower here, but we want to build a medical team, not to perform brain surgeries, obviously, but to just render aid and to talk about it so that if something happens, we're not in shock and we have an idea what we're going to do. We have an idea that of where things are and things that we're going to need so that we can provide it. Maybe just running and getting a bottle of water for somebody. Maybe that's all they need. Maybe they need Pepto-Bismol. I don't know. But the idea is that we will talk about these things, and we'll talk about it amongst ourselves, and we'll build a team and we'll be able to respond if and when something happens. So how do we provide a reasonable response? A competent response. How do we do that? How do we respond with competence and confidence? How do we do that? Train. Yeah, we train. That's what, when we're talking about it, that's a form of training. We work through things. That's how we do it. We talk about the things that we need, and we get them. We run exercises, at some point drills, and we learn a lot from that. We discuss the items that we need to have on hand so that we will have them when we need them. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. So we need to be ready for something that could happen by planning and being ready. If we purchase the right things, if we discuss the right things, if we run an exercise and we discuss what happened and we talk about it, there's a lot that can be learned, and we'll probably be credited for doing the right thing in a very chaotic moment if and when that happens. So I mentioned about this is a non-sterile environment. It's a pretty clean church, but it's a non-sterile environment. And we have some trained medical folks. Hopefully those with the most training and experience will be here if and when something like this happens. But they all work shift work and they can't always be here. So I'm telling you right now, something happens. I don't have anything at the moment. No EMT, no first aid, no CPR, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to go see what I can do. And I might remember a few things in the heat of the battle. Hopefully I will. But, let's say Caleb, Jawan, Damien, he's an EMT. Let's say they're not here. Let's say Mark and RJ are not here. They're all working, And so the rest of us who we don't deal with these chaotic events on a regular basis, we don't, if something happens, we just can't all sit back. We got to do something. And I got to tell you, if I get up and go approach a situation, if you're there by my side, that's going to make me feel better. I don't know if it'll make the person hurting, feel any better, but it's going to make me feel better. And because, and you perhaps will think of something that I've forgotten. And maybe I'll think of something that you've forgotten. And we can help each other and we can help the person. And so we need to be willing and ready. This is our family.
Right. That's right.
This is our family. And if somebody in my family's hurting, I want to be able to help them. I want to be there for them. I don't want to just sit back. So, pardon me while I look over my notes here just a moment. Okay. It's Thursday evening. I used this scenario or one very close to it with the safety team. It's Thursday evening. It's about 7:40. So we're about 20 minutes from getting out. Now, before I go any further, did you know that every year there are, on average, 2 tornado touchdowns within 30 miles of where we stand? 2. Every year, 2 touchdowns. Now think about that. This is probably one of the most likely events that will happen statistically. Okay? It's very rare. Of course, this safety team issue, very rare, very rare. Still, it's very rare, thank God, to have a shooting in a church. Thank the Lord. Very rare. Church disruptions are more likely to have that, but that's still kind of rare. And we have some advantages for some of those things because of where we are. But anyway, what is more likely to happen is this scenario. It's Thursday evening, 7:40, thunderstorm, funnel cloud sweeps through the area. It knocks trees down across Willits Crossing at the S-turn. That's not a real super S-turn, but it's an S-turn down there. You know where I mean? That little creek goes under there. Since I've been here, that's happened at least once, maybe twice, where there was stuff down and you couldn't get through because the S-turn was boggled up. So let's say trees are down, the S-turn, it's shut down. We're not going anywhere for 3 hours because they've got to get crews out here. There's power lines. They've got to untangle all that mess, cut the trees and all that. So we're stuck here. Well, that's not all. It's going to take them 2 to 3 hours to clear Willits Crossing. The same storm ripped open part of our roof. And here's what happened. Injuring some of our church family. We have 10 injuries that are mostly cuts and bruises. Okay? Then we have 4 with trauma and anxiety from what just happened. Now let me tell you, if the roof gets ripped off, that'll probably give some people some trauma. Because that is, the scripture talks about when in the last days, around the coming of the Lord, where the sky departs like a scroll, and the scriptures that describe it, there's a number of scriptures that talk about this event that's going to happen. It is very loud, and it's going to get everybody's attention on earth. I mean, he's trying to get our attention now. COVID, other things, there's more things coming, trust me. He's trying to get our attention. Behold, the Lord is coming. That's what he preached Thursday night. He's trying to get our attention. Well, so if that happens, there's probably going to be some trauma and anxiety. So we have 4 people with trauma and anxiety from the roof being ripped off and all that. And then there's 3 with serious lacerations and 2 more with what we suspect are broken leg, and 1 has a broken rib. I just had a cracked rib. I got to tell you, that was painful. Oh my word. That was about a month ago, and I still can feel it. That hurts. That really hurts. You don't want that. Anyway, so here we go. What are we going to do? Call 911. I like it.
Well, for the road portion of it, 911 would start the police, which would then start SMECO, which would then start the fire department to cut down the trees and start repairing the power lines. So that's that situation resolved, which is a phone call.
The medical side.
Here, yeah.
So we're gonna have to get all the injured persons, and for us on the medical side, we have what's called the start triage or jump start triage. If you can walk, you're green. If you're hurt, but you're not dying, you're yellow. If you possibly could die in the next hour or so, you're red. If you're dead already, you're black, sorry. But most of the patients that, sorry guys, we really have to divorce ourselves from emotion when we're dealing with people. But most of the injuries that you described are mostly superficial.
Yep.
The trauma, the long bone fractures, the rib fractures, all those are gonna need operating rooms. They're not gonna die from them immediately. Anxiety, it's not fun, but your body will cope with it. If you outbreathe yourself, you'll pass out and then the problem's over. You're not anxious if you're unconscious. It's a fact.
Just having nightmares.
So yeah, honestly, as far as the safety team and our emergency team, like we said, We need somebody to do triage and treatment. We need somebody to work on transport and exfil or getting out. I mean, we have enough gentlemen with four-wheelers and toys that could go down there and start making our way out, and we could figure out some way to get people out. I mean, we also have back through that way. If
Oh, yeah.
it was, you know, if it's bad enough, it's tore down trees here, it's tore down trees back
There,
here.
there are multiple ways in and out of this, even though with a car, there's only one way. But there are multiple ways in and out, so enough of us know how to do that. And we could pick up some, you know, I don't know if an ambulance could get close enough, then we could bring somebody in if we had to. I mean, there's different things we can do. That's good. One thing I want to touch on, and at a later meeting, I would like to have, well, I have a presentation, not from me, but from one of my classes I've taken on 911. Now, I actually, I'm like a cat that's had 9 lives. I used to be a 911 dispatcher too. You know that? I've done everything. I've lived everywhere, done about everything. Anyway, it's a lot different than when I did it. Now my understanding is most of them are very highly trained. With me, because I could spell and I could type and I could talk, they said, you're going to do dispatch. So I did. But anyway, you shouldn't be afraid to call 911. We can always call them back and say, hey, this is not what we thought it was. They're probably still going to show up to see for themselves. That's okay. But my point is a lot of people have anxiety thinking about calling 911. And they're people doing a job just like you are when you go to your job. And so you don't need to be afraid to call 911. Almost everything we talk about, one of the first things that needs to happen is somebody needs to call 911. And if you're not sure, I wonder if somebody did, call 911. Just call. Because, you know, the last several times I've called 911 for something going on. Somebody, usually it's a driver that's they're going off the road. There's something, you know, like they're inebriated or something. I forget the right word you use, incapacitated or something. Anyway, but I called 911. I haven't called them lately now to think about it, but I've called them quite a few times over the years. When I see something like that, I'll say, hey, you got a driver that seems to be incapacitated. And they are really bad all over the road. And, you know, yes, thank you. You're the third caller. You know, they'll tell you that. So they can handle that. The more calls they get on something, so if 10 people call, they know there's something going on back here at Crossroads. And that lets them know that, okay, there's something going on back there. And they're going to start sending cars and trucks and ambos and whatever we need. So don't be afraid to call 911. And I do have a presentation at some point I would show you that with a 911 dispatch manager and also one of his or her, I forget, dispatchers. And they talk to you. And I thought it was pretty enlightening, pretty good. So, all right. Now, there was something I was going to tell you at the beginning, and Pastor asked me to start. Really, what started it was some of these church shootings. Kind of, you know, he talked to me about putting together a security team or a safety team, and so what I did was I joined 2 national organizations, Sheepdog Church Security, and also Faith-Based Security Network, I think it is, FSBN, yeah, or FBSN. Anyway, I've joined both of them, and I've learned a lot from both of them, taken classes from them, and also from a third group I've taken some classes from. And it's been very, very good. But so what, and I've read a number of things, so I've done a lot of research into this, and I don't have all the answers. I'm open to suggestions at all times. But I want to tell you that in researching all this, what I found, a lot of these are doing what they're recommending. A lot of churches are following it, including Crossroads, is they have like an emergency response group, whatever they call it, and they have it broken down into 2 teams, just like I've presented to you, the medical team and the safety team. We call it safety team instead of security because safety team is it's a more appropriate name because it doesn't just cover security. So if you don't know, we're watching the door when we have a church service, we're watching the door at all times. As a general rule, we have one way in and out here. You know, obviously, we carry stuff in and out a different door. It's open, a different door is open for a very brief period of time. But the idea is, you know, the sheepdog was at the entrance to the sheepfold. And they had a wall. And so that's the idea for the safety team, but it covers all kinds of things, whereas the medical just, you know, we have enough people that have medical training that we separate the two out. But yet there is some overlap there, and that's fine. But that, I just want you to know that there's been a lot of work on this, a lot of research by others, and it just made sense that we do a very similar thing here. There's a friend of mine, he's got a church back pretty close to where I'm from. He's not the pastor, but he's the safety team director. He's got a team of 65 people on his safety team. Of course, they have a big church. It's a big church. And he's not in charge of their medical. So at some point, and if anybody with medical training wants to take over the medical side, be the leader for the Crossroads medical team, please see me about that. Because at some point, I'm trying to do it now, but definitely could use somebody to run that aspect of it. And at some point, somebody could take over the safety team. And then in the case of me still being here, like I am now, I would be the director for both, and we would all just work together, and we'd help each other. And if you're gone, I would be there for you, and vice versa, things like that. So as we grow, as we get bigger, we're going to need that. We're going to need people to step up and do different roles. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about how this started, and that's how we got where we are today. Our safety team it's already been valuable to have a safety team already. It's been a good thing for Crossroads. And I believe at some point we're going to be glad that we have come together and have a medical team. We're going to be thankful because we're going to have pre-planned, we're going to have talk through it, walk through it, and it's going to be a good thing. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
So in this last scenario with the 10 injuries, the 4 traumatized, anxiety, would it be the safety team that goes to scope out where the safe place is?
Yes.
Then that the roof was ripped off?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is yes. So, it dawns on me just now that we didn't really talk about that scenario very much. I just kind of blew right through it. But yes. So in that event, the roof is ripped off. Was it the sanctuary? Was it here? Was it both? Was it the middle? Where was it ripped off at? Most likely it's going to be the sanctuary or here. Most likely. Because the safest place, most likely, is going to be the center building. So the youth room, nursery, and the 2 restrooms is one of those areas, not the foyer because of the glass. So you wouldn't want to be in the foyer, sitting in those cushy chairs. You'd want to be, around the corner, sitting on the floor somewhere. So the safety team would spring into action, and yes, they would find out, for instance, what if we have to just get out of the building? And this is something we've discussed in the safety team meetings. For instance, what if somebody comes in, what if they make it inside the building with a firearm? And we start flushing people out these doors.
Deputy, do you right? I'll do it.
Yeah, he'll do it.
What?
He said he'll take care of it.
But where are we going? We've got to meet somewhere. And if it's Thursday night, we've got Sunday school teachers. They've got to account for their kids. Where did they go? It's night. But the safety team will spring into action, find out what part of the building is safe, what isn't, as best they can. None of us are engineers, building engineers, but as a general rule, we'll be able to see if it's safe or not. Probably, hopefully. So that was a great question. And the other thing you got to worry about if it's a Thursday night is Sunday school kids and their classes in here. Now, here it's not so bad. The larger church campuses where you have multiple buildings, it's a real problem. So this is something, Now, so I have the potential to be on 4 Zoom meetings every week. I don't make them all because I've got other things going on. But with these various national safety teams, it's really interesting, this stuff. And I'm making friends with some of them. And it's interesting because there was something you read about in the paper, this was about a month ago, and it happened with not a guy who was in our meeting, but it was his best friend was the safety team leader for that church. I think it was in Oregon. And they were best buddies. And he said, yeah, in fact, while we were talking about the situation that happened in this church in Oregon, he was texting his buddy who was a safety team leader where this happened, and he was giving input to our meeting. It was very interesting. I don't remember now what it was about. But so we talk about these events, and when this stuff happens, we got to get an inventory, if I can use that word, of the kids where they're at, because it's Thursday night, especially in the winter when it's dark. And then you've got the parents. Okay, it's a tornado. What is the parent going to do? They're going to go grab their kid, and you're not going to stop them. Nor should you really probably try, because it's their kid. Nobody's going to stop me if it's my kid. I'm going to go get him. That's just my instinct, is it not? Yeah. So we have to talk about those things. How do we handle that? What do we do? Our job is on the safety team. We're not going to lay hands on anybody other than to pray. If we need to lay hands on somebody, I'm talking about forcible stuff. 911. RJ and Mark are not here. 911. I mean, even if they are here, it's 911. Because we're going to get the on-duty guys here and gals. We're going to get them here. Because that's their job, take care of it. Okay. Did I go down that rabbit hole deep enough?
Yeah. Sorry.
A little too far?
Yeah, a little too far.
A little too far. Sorry. Boy, that dessert looks good. Any other questions? Come on, got any questions? Yes, sir.
So, 3 pieces of equipment we definitely have to get, like for medical emergencies like that. We have a wheelchair, a stretcher or cart, a straitjacket.
Okay, I got to tell you right now, I'll float that idea by the pastor. My guess is he's already got a couple straitjackets hidden away somewhere.
Oh my goodness, that's crap.
I haven't, I guess but I work in a school, so a smaller school than a large, but we actually have emergency plan books put in place. And the first page is based on if it's a tornado or a shooter or a fire, where do you go? And the building is split. This is a small building, but the building is split up to where each group of people in that building goes to if you have to exit the building. If you have to stay in the building, the lockdown part or something like that, we know where everybody is. But it's all written down in a book.
So we have already broached this subject several times, and we haven't come up with okay, I have a couple problems with this, several maybe. Let me give you an idea. So I've had some of my compadres in other churches send me their stuff electronically. 65, 85 pages.
Ours is like 6.
Who wants to study all that?
How much is yours?
Ours is like 6, but then we have a card that's front and back.
Yeah, that's what
The-
I'm
the
thinking.
other-
Like a car.
The other thing that we brought up in our safety team meeting, it's legally binding. If you have a
Yes.
paper that says this is your emergency plan, and you deviate from that in any way, they're gonna say, oh, well, here's your plan, why didn't you follow it? Why is Crossroads not following their own plan? It puts Crossroads as a big liability. We don't have it written, and we act in best judgment or in the best interest of the person, that's more of a good Samaritan.
So,
Should have some things not written down.
Yeah.
well,
In our memory.
so far the things I have written down for the safety team, I've tried to be very careful how I word it. For instance, we have a primary and a alternate or secondary safety team person on each service. Basically, if law enforcement's here, it's, they're both secondary. I don't have them monitoring the cameras because first off, they don't always make it here. They got to work the schedule and all that. So I don't want to, booger them by making them monitor the cameras while they're here. So one of the rest of us will monitor the cameras so that they can partake of the service, but if something happens, they're here. And that's the idea behind that. But where is the primary person? The primary person is in one of the reserved chairs. They're just inside the sanctuary, or they're going to be probably around the First Impressions booth. After First Impressions has left the booth, then otherwise they're just kind of hanging around somewhere in the foyer area. I mean, but the way I've worded it is normally. I use the word normally, you will be here, because I want them to have the ability to walk back here if they see something doesn't look right. They see that, hey, there's somebody in the nursery. Shouldn't be in there. It's not a mama with a baby. It's somebody, so they'll go and, I have it worded so that they're in the nursery and somebody busts through the front door, then we're not liable because the procedure said you would be right there at the foyer. Because we're not armed guards. But we're more like an, early warning and detection system. Watching, because almost it's like 98% of problems that happen in a church begin in the parking lot. So we monitor the parking lot and the foyer because they got to come through the foyer to, do something. So, but it's worded because of what Caleb said. But at some point, we need to have something. We'll have to have some stuff written down, but we got to really be careful with that due to legalities. Yes?
So, my question is, under the UPCI umbrella, is there like the SOP, a standard operating procedure when it comes to security, or each individual church could draw their own and go from there?
Each individual church, and so the other thing that it has to be, we have to talk to our insurance companies, if that applies. And we also have a lawyer, church lawyer, so we have to talk to them. So anything that we would do in the way of procedures, we have to run all that by them because we have to be in compliance with, you got Maryland laws, you've got, insurance company rules, and of course the law firms would have information for us. So we have to, so that's why it's not, and it would vary from state to state. It's completely different in Maryland as it is in Indiana, I can tell you that. It's a whole different ballgame, a lot different than Louisiana. Gail, you think you had a question?
No, that's okay.
We're just finishing up, Pastor, with questions.
Actually, I could say it though.
Okay.
So I'm not just gonna. So, like for the first responders team, like, could you have some type of like electronic, like in your ear or something to say like something is wrong, so it won't be a distraction to the congregation?
In a larger setting, typical church, the safety teams have that, not the medical teams, team. So this is the medical. There's several here that are on both because of their training, their jobs, stuff like that. But in a larger setting, yes, the church safety team would have earpieces for that very reason, to be fairly quiet. And in a large situation, a large church, they have some people that are in uniform and some that are not in uniform, that are on duty, but they're set in strategic places throughout the congregation or positioned around the church. That's in a big setting. We don't have that yet. I anticipate we'll need that before it's all said and done.
Yes, amen.
So we think about getting the AED, but
AED?
yeah, do we think about getting anything else like maybe Narcan or EpiPens or?
The last safety meeting I think we talked about, or was that you and me privately talking about it? I'm not
So
sure.
the AEDs, there's a lot of barrier to that because of maintenance and liability. So they have to be maintenance, we have to have a maintenance plan. I believe in Maryland, they have to have medical oversight. So we'd have to contract a doctor or someone like that to provide medical oversight. Narcan, okay, sure, we can get that because you can go pick that up at CVS over the counter, it's not a big deal. Yes, we've had, people that may be using or have used or whatever, overdose is a possibility. EpiPens, absolutely not. That is way too much liability. It's very, they need to be prescribed directly to a person. If someone has an allergic reaction, we'll call 911. Beyond that, it's, like we said earlier, CPR, hands only, stop active bleeding, maybe Narcan. That would be the extent of what we could do here legally.
Good question. Now, some of you have questions, right? What are they? Now's a good time for them.
I just want to say also, you mentioned a good thing about a lot of people scared to call 911.
Yeah.
On my end, we see people don't want to be involved because, they hold them. I don't want to witness something, I just want to call in. But calling 911 really helps out a lot.
Yeah.
And the amount of calls you get to that, it hypes up the emergency. You'll be surprised how fast it'll get us to respond. So calling 911 is very important.
Rule of thumb is if there's a question, you call. You call. Now, if you have time, and let's say one of our first responders is here. They've got more experience dealing with this kind of thing. If they're right, you're right by them, and you're not sure, Joanne, should we call? Has anybody called 911? Should we be calling them? Ask one of the first responders.
Well, they'll yell it. They'll say,
Yeah.
call
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that, yeah. What other questions might you have?
Depending on the emergency, too, I know this is probably for the safety team, but if there was an active shooter, okay, and somebody was getting shot at, we have victims in the sanctuary, there are 2 off-duty police officers here. Make sure if you're calling 911, you just let them know, hey,
Yes.
there's off-duty police officers here, so we don't get shot.
Not in uniform. Did you understand that? So, and that's very, very important. Pastor's job, when something happens, he's going to be talking to the congregation. Let's say it's in the sanctuary. Let's say it's not back here, Thursday night, Sunday school kids back here. It's not that. Let's say it's in the sanctuary, okay? Either Thursday evening or the problem I'm talking about, the medical event, or Sunday morning. So pastor's going to be talking to the saints. Saints, you need to pray right now. He might say, get down on the floor and pray. He might say that. He might say, go out the door and pray. Go out this door off to my right and walk across the road and wait over by the barn and pray. He may tell you, who knows, depending on the situation. Okay? But that's what he's going to be doing. He's going to be directing, and obviously any situation that could change. And he may be doing something else. But as pre-planning this, talking about it, that's what he's going to be doing, typically. Next question. Really? Is that it? No more questions?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to add something to the possible needs besides the wheelchair, maybe crutches. Because I know at school we have crutches as well.
So, this will be your homework assignment. You ready for this? I'm asking you to put down you can send me an email. If you want to create a document, you can do that, or you can just type up an email and send it to me. Don't text me. I get too many texts, it's hard for me to keep up with that. But if you would send me an email with any thoughts or ideas that you have of things, resources we should have, just any ideas that you have, send it to me. So by the way, when I was telling you a couple different times, I deviated from my little notes and been kind of all over the place. But so we have the a committee, a leadership team, okay, of Caleb, Mark, and myself. So the idea, Caleb represents the medical side and Mark represents the law enforcement side, is the idea. And so this leadership committee, we get these ideas, we talk about them, and then we confer with the pastor after that. And so that's kind of how that works. So any ideas you have, feel free to see me, or you could see one of them. But as far as taking your idea and putting legs on it, and you need to give it to me, or probably give it to me, let me handle the administrative part, and then I'll discuss it with Mark and Caleb, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. The idea is not to make this difficult. The idea is to keep things, running smoothly and have a procedure for handling your ideas and your thoughts so they don't get lost. Because if you talk to somebody over here and that idea doesn't get to one of us, then okay, what good was it? So give us your ideas and your thoughts on that. Anybody else? Pastor, you have anything you'd want to say? All right. Well, thank you for coming. And if some of you are, I know some of you are kind of nervous about this. If you are, please talk to me about it offline. If you're willing to serve, this is a ministry. This is a ministry. And I need to know if you are or are not willing to serve in this ministry. I guess I need to know if you're not willing. If I don't hear from you that you're not willing, I'm going to consider you as willing, okay? And then next week we'll let you perform the brain surgeries.
And you gotta let them know they're only gonna be used if they're here.
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah, now for the safety team,
not calling you to do anything.
I actually haven't put together a schedule yet. I need to. But there will be no schedule for the medical team. It's if you're here and something happens.
That's it.
That's it. Okay?
This is a really good idea. I wish more ladies had churches doing that,
Yeah.
but I'm really on board with this. This is by far something really good. This, I think you said, it's a good ministry to have.
It's a good ministry to have. And then, we get together with Grace Gospel every now and then. Well, we've already conspired. They're struggling a little bit getting their safety team up and running. But when we had our joint service, the last one with Brother Kreitz, I think, was that when we had the last one?
I think so.
Brother Kreitz? I made a discovery. I needed somebody on their team right beside me. Because there were all kind of people come through the door. I didn't know who they were. So we talked about it afterwards. And so whenever we have a joint service from now on, one of us on our team is going to help them at their church, and one of them is going to be with us if it's at our church. And you never know. You could be in another church service as a medical team person, and you may be called into action. And it could just be that us meeting and talking about it, working through some exercises, that you'll have the confidence and the competence to do something, as opposed to, what do I do? Yes.
I think one day, to the first impressions team, one of the most effective things you can do to help a first responder, if it's a medical emergency, we have ambulances coming or whatever, our building isn't that big, but just directing the crew when they come in, like, hey, it's in the sanctuary, have somebody meet them at the door and escort them to the patient. It just makes everything a lot easier. I've been in several times where we go into big buildings and you're like, oh, where's the patient? What patient? I didn't know there was a patient. Who, what, where, how? And we're circling around.
Yeah.
So that's a great help to us for the first impression team.
That is very important, what he just said. Very important. We've talked about this with the safety team, and I'm glad you brought it up. I just need to think about it. Anything else? All right. God bless you. Thank you for coming.